So let's take it back to the middle of 2018. How did it all begin?
Ooh, well, for me, I was on a night out with my friends, and one of my friends was like, oh, hey, you're still single, and they're always trying to hook me up with people or introduce me to people. And then she had a few people in mind for me, and then she showed me a few pictures, and this was on just a night out when we were in a bar, so I wasn't taking much notice. I was like, yeah, whatever, like, that's fine, you can just text them all. But she actually only texted you, and you then had my number. And I remember it was a back and forth of what she liked, what's he like, and then you eventually texted me, and from that day, we've texted each other every day since then. That was my story. What about you? What were you doing on that day?
I think I was just sitting at home, and my cousin, who happens to be your best friend, just texted me saying, "Are you single, and are you interested in meeting anyone?" I'm like, "Yeah, like I'm open to anything really." And she said, I've got a friend of mine. You may have met her before. And then she sent me your details, sent me some pictures. I'm like, yeah, sure, go ahead. But the funny thing is, like, I've not actually met you before, despite like multiple coincidences that should have probably allowed us to do so. For example, well, you probably better off telling me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's take it back. So that was in 2018 when we first started talking. But actually, we had met way before then without actually having met, if that makes sense. So in 2015, it was my best friend's wedding, who is Akash's cousin. And obviously I was at the wedding, I was a bridesmaid, and he was at the wedding with his family as well. And yet we never met, but I met his mum, dad, sister. I hung out with his sister, your sister, for the whole day. And yet we didn't cross paths at that time.
Yeah.
And even prior to that, it was another one of your cousin's wedding, who's my best friend's brother. And you were at that wedding, and so was I. And yet we hadn't crossed paths. And what's funny is, I've had your mum on Facebook since 2015.
Yeah.
So I've had her on Facebook for all that time. I've just never come across you.
Yeah, you guys are planning this on the sly all along.
Exactly. I think so. It must be just, they've been planning it.
So there was all these like random coincidences, but so when I saw the pictures, I think I was with my sister at the time, and I think because I looked you up on Instagram, and I saw like my sister as a mutual follower. I saw my sister as a mutual friend on Facebook, and I was thinking, this is strange. I was asking her, she's like, oh yeah, I've hung out with her before in the past. Like I've met her a few times. You know, once at the wedding, but also like way back when as well. And I'm like, how have I not met her? But I mean, we always talk about it as the fate, right? The fact that it was the right time. Because then we started speaking, sort of end of June 2018, and then we met early July, within like 10 days or so, 7 to 10 days. I think I was about to go on a trip, came back, and then we met.
Yeah, good times. It feels like it was a long time ago, and yet I remember everything so vividly. Yeah. I remember that period of us talking, the period of us dating. Yeah, so it's been nearly 3 years, and I just remember every little step that we had.
Yeah. So let's take that journey across a bit more. Talk about like what it's been like actually like dating. Because I always make this joke of like, I'm probably not the easiest person to date. I'm probably not like, it's not going to be straightforward. It's not going to be the usual sort of 9 to 5 kind of gig.
Yeah.
But you've never really like been fazed by it, and I think that's always been quite, for me, that was always like that. Oh yeah, I think this is the right one, because like in the past, I've had experiences where that's always got in the way, like work or just the way I am, like the drive and all these sorts of things. Whereas this has never really fazed you. If anything, it's like it's made you like more pushing me more forward, which has been interesting. So tell us about that journey and like how you've approached it.
Okay, I think that's nice to hear, obviously, and I feel that when we met, I was in a really good place on my own. So I'd done a lot of traveling. I'd lived alone. I'd lived up north for a few years. So I'd done my stint of being by myself and having my independence. So when I met you, it was very refreshing that you had your own life, I had my own life, and we worked really well together. Like for me, it just gelled. There wasn't that neediness from you. It's almost like you did your own thing, I did my own thing, then we kind of mixed and matched, and it just felt right. So I liked that you were as you were. But what I would say is, I think probably, I can't remember how long into our dating it was, but you sent me this podcast.
Yeah.
So you sent me this podcast. It was called, I think it was 15 Things You Should Know Before Dating an Entrepreneur by Patrick Bet-David. And when I listened to that, I was like, wow, all these things were going on in my head that this is literally you. When he was speaking about you. And then he talks about all his experiences. So as you mentioned, you're not working just 9 to 5. So obviously being an entrepreneur, you're working pretty much all hours of the day. And whether that's not just kind of physically working at your laptop, you're constantly thinking. I feel like your brain never switches off. So for me, it did take some time to get used to, but it never impacted me. And it never made me feel like, oh, you're not spending enough time on me, or whatever the case was. I think for me, it was just like, right, keep working hard, keep going. I understood your drive and your ambition, because I had my own drive and my own ambition and things that I was working on. So it's quite nice. So I remember times where, for example, really late at night, you just all of a sudden be like, oh, I have an idea. And you'd go and get your notebook and start writing things down. And I'd be like, what, it's so late? Like, how's your brain working? Or we'd just be out and about and I'd be talking to you about something. And then I look over at you and I just know you're in your zone, you're in your mindset, something's triggered you. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what did you say? Sorry, I was just thinking about something. And then you go and write something on your phone and I was like, you know what, okay, that's fine. You do your thing, that's fine. And it's just having that understanding of this is you. And if you weren't doing that, then you wouldn't be you. And I liked you for that. So it was nice that you had that kind of ambition, that drive, you wanting to push further, keep thinking, keep progressing. I like that mindset and it matched my mindset really well. Because I love the kind of self-progression, self-development kind of mindset as well. So, it worked well in that sense.
But then what about like when it started, like, you know, there's no normal holiday. It's like we're going on holiday and I'm waking up a couple hours before you just to do some work, and then like throughout the day there might be periods of the day where I'm going off, and you know, I think I'm a bit better now, but yeah, there's been periods, like there's been holidays where it's been like a normal working week.
Yeah.
So how like.
Yeah, so we have had that where we are on holiday. So obviously
like
normal
holiday. Yeah.
Holiday. So normal couples, which I say, my friends who are in relationships, they go on holiday and their partners have time off. And when they have time off, they can completely switch off. Whereas I know that when I go on holiday with you, there's things that you still think about, emails you may need to check and respond to. So I go in thinking that's fine. But what I do really appreciate is that you make it work. So even though you're working, let's say 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, you always then give me the time that I need. And another thing that helps is, as much as it's a holiday, for me, I'm happy like just doing my own thing and being on my own. I'll be like, I'll just hang out by the pool, go to the beach, go shopping by myself, because I've done so much independent travel anyway. So I've done a lot of traveling on my own. So it doesn't faze me that you're like, right, I need to work between 1 and 5. That's fine. You do your thing. I'm just gonna go to the bar. I'll do this. I'll hang out and then come and meet you for dinner. So I didn't actually feel that it impacted me and what I was doing. But it would obviously be nice to have a time where you're completely switched off as well. Because I've seen you now where you are switched off, and it's just nice, isn't it? Having that quality time as a whole for the whole period. But
I think it's definitely there more now, but I think in the earlier days it was a lot harder, just because I think we almost started dating at the same time I started building RNT.
Growing, yes.
It's like the time we started dating was almost literally like when I was like, okay, now we're going to push this thing.
Yeah.
So that journey's kind of aligned with each other.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like obviously we've had our challenges, or especially me, because I talk about love languages. You also sent me the love languages book, which I read, and my love language is quality time. So that's the one thing that I crave from a relationship. And although you give that to me, there were times where we didn't quite have that, and we resolved it through communication. So eventually I was like, I'm not going to let this build. But the one thing I would say is, when girls are in relationships and if they're having issues, I feel like they might tend to speak to their friends or their family members. But the one thing I'd say is that for me, none of my friends are dating an entrepreneur or with an entrepreneur. So it was quite difficult for them to relate, or for me to get advice from them, if that makes sense. So when I had these things, I was like, right, the only person I can actually go to is you, because they're so different in their relationships. Their expectations are different. So dating an entrepreneur is very, very unique, I'd say. And it takes a certain type of person to be able to date one, whether it's male or female. So if you're dating a female entrepreneur, I think it would be very similar. It'd be a very similar thing. So
yeah, it's just that understanding of like, I've got my thing, you've got your thing, but not being intertwined in identities. That's the key thing. Like one thing I always said at the beginning was like, I've got my own, I said this to myself, I've got my own race I'm running. I want someone who's running their own race as well, but together we can run it even better. Absolutely. And I think that was the key for me, is like, it's got to be individual, but together there's a rocket underneath it, but we're not reliant on each other's races in order to do so.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that sums us up really well. So we have our own things going on, and yet when we come together, whether it's a project or we're supporting each other in something that we're doing, it just skyrockets.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things which I've learned more so, I'd say, in the last 12-15 months, or since we've been living with each other as well. That's just really excelled everything, like my mindset, what I'm doing, my work, everything. It's been really good. Like the support that we give each other, all the help that I get from you, the advice that I get from you, even that I come to you for. So yeah.
So what was that? You mentioned the challenges. When they had those challenges, you said you couldn't ask your friends. What did you bring to the table there in terms of discussing challenges? What were they that you were feeling?
So for me, well, I can give an example. So back when we were dating, so we weren't living together obviously, and when you came over for dinner, let's say, because we may have met up once or twice a week, and I'd be expecting, like, the one time I get to see you in the week, let's say, I'd be expecting like, oh hey, like I'm quite an extrovert, so I just like to be like, oh, how's everything going? And then you just be like, I think you probably come around, let's say 7, and then you'd be like, oh right, I'm just really tired, and you'd have dinner and then you'd just fall asleep, and I'd be like, hey, I want to talk to you, like, what are you doing? Come and talk to me. So I think it was things around that I wasn't getting the quality time or the activities. So I really like to do things, as you know, so I like to go into Central, go to restaurants, or maybe not just restaurants, do activities. So at the beginning we had loads of activity dates, and then eventually it just kind of like died down a little, and for me that was the quality time, because I get to see you in a new light. It's not just in a home setting. So it's quite important to me, and I think that just kind of dipped a little bit at the time when you were, let's say, growing and there was a lot going on in the business, but I did my best to just support, because I thought to myself, this is an issue, but it's definitely something I can handle. Like, we had good communication throughout the whole week, so we text every day, we'd call, so there was nothing wrong in that sense. It's just the face-to-face meet. And I remember at one time, I think it was in 2019, you were on a trip to Kenya, and I really felt it then. And obviously you were away, so we texted it out, and then as soon as you got back, we met up, and you suggested this check-in that we do. And now we do that every single week. I know you've mentioned it before, I think I've talked about it before as well. So the check-in procedure of us having a journal. So we have a journal and we discuss, or we talk about our appreciations, our to-do list, room for improvement, so all the challenges that we've had, highlights, and what date nights we have. So that really helped.
I think the room for improvement is the key one there, because I think the rest is all good in terms that you're appreciating, adding a bit of positivity in there, but the room for improvement, I think, has been the biggest game changer, because that way nothing gets kept under the carpet, and there's not this like lingering fog above us, which I think is what breaks down a lot of relationships. Is that inability to express the harder negative, not negative, but the harder discussions that may come across as negative, may be perceived as negative by the other person. So being able to have those open discussions on a weekly basis allows for any clouds above to sort of move past.
Yeah,
on a very swift basis. Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's all about nipping it in the bud. Yeah. Like, if there's something happening, let's talk it out and see what we can do to improve, and then that's it, nip it in the bud, and let's keep moving forward. And I do know people struggle with that in relationships, because when I tell people, oh, we have this room for improvement section, and they're like, oh, what do you talk about? I say, well, anything that I'm not happy with, or that he's done something, or whatever that is, and they're just like, oh, how do you say that? Can you just say that? And I'm thinking, yeah, can you not? Like, why can you not? Or can you specifically you should do that. You should talk to your partner. But I was just smiling when you said room for improvement, because initially when we did our check-ins, I think it was called problems.
Yeah.
Right? So we called it problems, and every time we got to the problems section, I was just like, oh no, like it just sounds so negative.
Yeah.
So I had the suggestion of, actually, can we change problems to room for improvement? Opportunities to improve. I was like, let's change the wording so we approach it in a more positive way, rather than thinking there's alarm bells and problems. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a definite game. It's been a definite game changer, because it allows that regular sort of spring cleaning, if you want to put it, and just open conversation. If you just take it back to the holiday example you gave, and that ability to just feel completely okay on your own, as in you don't feel like, oh, he's doing this, so that means he's going to ruin my whole time. Where did that come from? Where did that level of development come from?
Honestly, I think it came from being alone. So since university for me, I moved out of my family home, and I actually haven't lived back in my family home since then. So since I was 18, I've always lived out. And when I say lived out, okay, university, a lot of people live out, but then since then I had a job, and in the job that I had, I was moving around from city to city, and when I moved to these cities, I didn't know anyone, so I was alone. And I remember thinking to myself when I entered these cities, like, right, there's so much to do here, I have no one to do it with, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I'll just do it myself. If I want to go check out that shopping centre, I'll go by myself. If I want to see what's happening on, I don't know, this festival, or, I'll go by myself. And that really helped build my confidence, along with solo travel. So I did a lot of traveling by myself, just backpacking. So I'd just go with my backpack, book a flight, and just travel around the world. And that definitely helped my independence and confidence. And when you're traveling, obviously you want to have dinner or do an activity or anything, you just go by yourself. You meet people at the hostel, wherever you're staying even, but majority of the time you've got the freedom to do what you want, and you are on your own, so you don't really have someone close to you to rely on. So I think it just stemmed from all of that. All of the stuff that I've done through being alone has really helped me be in that position where I'm like, yeah, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, that's fine. Like, I'm very comfortable just being by myself.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned from you, is being more comfortable in yourself. A lot of men and women struggle with this.
Yeah.
Why do you think we struggle with just being alone, being comfortable in our thoughts, being able to just go away traveling solo? I've done quite a few solo trips as well, and I think, funnily enough, the weekend that we started speaking, I was about to go on a solo trip, and apparently that was
that just attracted me to you even more. I was like,
yeah.
oh my god, you just solo travel.
But whenever I tell people I've done solo travel, and not for just for work, that actual solo travel, it's always like, oh, why? Like, isn't that a bit weird? Isn't that boring? But the few times I've been, I've done it now 4 or 5 times, but short stints, not like yourself.
Yeah.
But it's always still come with that weird sort of reception of like, oh, you don't got anyone to go with?
Yeah.
Like,
I've had that, yeah.
Yeah. So why is there what's the issue around just being alone, of being comfortable in your thoughts alone? Why is that what on your experiences? Why is that a struggle?
Honestly, I think the one thing I'd say is fear. I was initially scared of doing all these things, and that's what most people are afraid of. If you're just there by yourself in your own thoughts, your mind's going to wander, you're going to think about, I don't know, past relationships, or some arguments that you've had, or your current relationship, or the struggles that you're facing, or if you're having mental health issues, whatever it is. But if you're alone, you feel it more. And especially when you go traveling, there's the whole element of the unknown, the fear of the unknown. You're going somewhere, you don't know where it is, or you've never been there before, you don't know what the people are like, you don't know if it's safe, you don't know if you're going to make friends, what if there's an accident, you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you're home, no matter where you are, you've got someone to contact, someone can, well, for most people anyway, but there's less fear, because you know what to expect. So I think there's that fear element.
Fear of what? Of what's going to come up in your head?
I think
fear
so, yeah.
of being with those thoughts.
Yeah, so there's two. So by yourself with the thoughts, as well as if you're traveling somewhere, then the unknown, the fear of what's going to come. Yeah. And that's scary because you hear all these horror stories, and dealing with these horror stories is just a learning experience within itself, and it will just allow you to grow. It's just taking you out your comfort zone. So I think there's a lot of fear around that, which is understandable.
How did you overcome it?
I just threw myself in. Yeah. So I started doing solo travel when I was 20. I went with one of my best friends from uni. Initially.
Solo travel.
Yeah, no, sorry. So initially I went with my best friend from uni, and she then went on to do travel in China.
Okay.
And at that point, she said to me, okay, I'm going to go here. And I said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go to, we were in Thailand. I thought, I'm just going to pop down to Malaysia by myself. Not knowing what to expect. I can't remember the exact conversation. I'm pretty sure she planted the seed in my head. And when I went, something in me just unleashed. It made me feel like, wow, firstly, there's so much of the world to see and experience. But secondly, this is an incredible experience. It made me feel so liberated. And I then craved that experience again. So even when I used to do solo travel, people were like, oh, do you not have any friends to go with? And I'm thinking, I have plenty of friends. But firstly, I want to go for maybe 1, 2, 3 months. Secondly, being by yourself, you can do what you want. So you don't have that conflict of, oh, one friend wants to do this, the other one wants to do this, the other one wants to do this. You're almost experiencing everything you want on your own terms. And I like that, the element of freedom. So it worked really well for me. So yeah.
One of the things I was saying earlier is I'm glad we didn't meet at all the other opportunities we had, because I think when we did meet, I was definitely in a place where I was comfortable in my own skin, and in a place where if I was to meet someone else, I'd still feel comfortable in just doing my thing and not worrying about what they were thinking, not deterring my own path for someone else. But if the alignment was right, then I knew that it'd take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that came from a few trips alone, but also just understanding myself more, but not being afraid to have those periods. And I've gone through multiple cycles of like just not spending any time alone, and then realizing on the other side like how much I need it. Like for example, more recently where I spent a bit more time alone, it's allowed me to overcome that fear of those thoughts in between, what's been suppressed for so long. But only on the other side do you realize what it was actually doing to you and what it was holding you back from. So I think that's something you've taught me a lot of, and you speak about it a lot with the community that you're building.
Yeah.
It is one of the linchpins to be more comfortable with yourself, loving yourself, etc. So, do you want to expand on that a bit more?
Yeah, so I say recently, it's been about 6-7 months now, started a online female community called Fearless Females. And in that, my mission is pretty much just to empower and inspire women to be at their best. Because when I was working in corporate roles, I just thought, and I even experienced myself, so many issues surrounding females and females not being listened to, or them not making their mark, or being in the senior positions. It was almost like I didn't have someone to aspire to in the companies that I was at. And it just made me feel that, are other women experiencing these challenges at work? And then I broadened out to be like, okay, well, what other things do women go through? And it's like, oh wow, like motherhood, for example, I know nothing about that. And I'd love to learn more, but if someone's going through it, it's someone else going through something else. And the whole thought process was, we're all going through similar things, and yet we don't reach out or support each other enough. And I'm talking not just your own little support network, but like strangers, women that you may not know. And I'm very lucky in the fact that I have a strong female support network, and we all go through our own individual things, and we're open to talking about things, but a lot of women don't. So I wanted to connect like-minded women who are going through all sorts of things, because it's okay. I don't want women to feel like they're the only ones going through it, or feeling that they're alone, for example. There's so many others who are going through the same thing, and I want us to all open up even, and reach out to each other, support each other. So this is the kind of community that I would like to build.
What are some of the common fears that you've seen in these women?
So things like, for example, we talked about being alone, so single life, dating, relationships, careers, So I was speaking to someone last week about them. They've actually got a very, very good job coming up, and yet she doesn't feel like she just doesn't understand how she even got the role. She doesn't feel like she deserved it. And I'm just there thinking, you've already got the job. Like, how are you in a position where you're doubting yourself? Like, you've done so much, you've crossed all these hurdles. So there's this whole element of you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Or even you don't love yourself. There's so many women who I hear talk negatively about themselves. And I personally would never talk negatively about myself in any aspect, because I just have so much love for myself. So when I hear these kind of things, I'm just thinking, we need to change that language. You shouldn't be talking negatively about yourself, because then it allows others to talk negatively about you, and it's almost a form of acceptance. So yeah, I think it's just loads of key topics around that, all revolving around self-love, I would say. Because if you master that, if you master loving yourself, I think you're sorted. I think you are then just conquering everything else, the confidence, the resilience, having an identity, being a part of the community, opening up, like just reaching out. There's all these things that you can do once you're in that place, in a good place by yourself.
I think the word acceptance is a good one, because the lack of love comes from rejection. You know, when you self-reject yourself.
Yeah. And
that's when you don't take care of yourself. And that's when you use food, you don't, all the other crutches you talk about, drugs, alcohol, excessive TV, whatever it may be, that's where all the crutches come in, because you've rejected yourself, so you're not going to take care of yourself. And that whole cycle continues, and you feed it. And there's only one way the only way to break it is to face yourself and reframe, right?
Yeah, I mean, you must see it a lot in your industry as well, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing we used to always speak about is, you used to say, I don't ever think about my food, I don't ever think about training, I don't do any of this sort of stuff. And I always used to wonder, like, how do you stay in such good shape without ever having to worry about these sorts of things? Yeah. And then you say, I just do it intuitively. Yeah. And I think intuitive eating comes from a lot of experience. Like, I can intuitively eat because I understand what's in food, but you're doing it without even understanding what's in the food. You're just doing it literally based on how it feels when you eat it. And then just I've had a big meal, so I won't have a big meal later. Or I'm eating out tonight, so tomorrow I'll just eat a little bit less. But not doing it in a strategic way, just doing it in a very much auto-regulatory way. And it's only recently, I think before we used to talk about, maybe it's because you're really active. So I used to go, maybe you're just really active. So that's why you don't control you don't have that sort of strategy around food. But then it turns out your step count wasn't even that high. It was a couple thousand steps a day. And then maybe when you were working
exposing me over here.
When you're working as an engineer, or maybe it got higher then. But then more recently, I think we've discovered that it's more than anything. It's literally just comes back to this. It comes back in full circle to this, because you had that experience in the early 20s of, let me try and really understand who I am at its core and really love that. You don't feel the need to, you could say, punish yourself with food or lack of activity or etc. And you've never had that issue because of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
I don't expose you with the steps and all these things.
Yeah, I was going to say, to put things into perspective. So, yes, I've always been the weight that I'm at. So my weight doesn't really fluctuate. It's been like this for probably 12 to 13 years, probably longer than that. I've always been the size that I'm at now. And that has come through this whole intuitive eating. I didn't even know I did it until you actually started asking me questions about it. Yeah. I just naturally know that I'm full, or I don't want that dessert, or actually yesterday, yes, I'll have the dessert. And I just do things naturally. But when I look at myself, I love the way I look. And I guess subconsciously know that if I was to change my eating habits, then I would look a different way. And when you talk about being active, I've only started the gym about 6 months ago. I'm really not active at all. So that's something that I've picked up recently. So yeah, I feel in a much better place, because although I was doing the intuitive eating and I loved the way I looked, I was very, very weak. Yeah. So there's a difference between being slim and having the build that I have versus you're slim, but you're strong.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I hadn't nailed. So I'd nailed my mental health, let's say, and my physical health, but it's just a combination of both, the strength element.
Yeah.
And that's what I really wanted to nail. So that's why I started the program, RNT. And as I joined, my strength has just gone up and up and up.
Yeah. But just on that, let's just discuss, because fitness is an interesting one, and in that when I get asked all the time, like, when you're dating someone who's not into fitness, how does it go? Like, how do you get them to do what you want? How do you get them to eat how you want? How do you get them involved with the gym? And I've always been like, I don't want someone who's like a fanatic, because that might drive me mad. But at the same, all you're talking about is that. But at the same time, I want someone who cares about their health, right?
Yeah.
Like, who values health as a high priority in their life.
Yeah.
But still, when you live with someone who's competes in bodybuilding, who does photo shoots, gets shredded, goes to the absolute extreme, it can be difficult to be with. How did you find that? Because how did you find that ability to, well, firstly, be with someone who has that weird sort of tendencies? Because I think there's a difference between like just being a healthy lifestyle and just taking it to the extreme, which I do at times. How did you find that, and has it changed you in any way?
Okay.
For the positive or the worse?
Yeah, so there's two things here. So firstly, when you're going through the extremes, so the only things I've seen are the photo shoot that you did.
Yeah.
So going through that, I'd had experiences of, so before you went through it, you told me about what it was like when you did it in 2017.
Yeah.
And you were saying that you were having mood swings, and you ate minimal food, you couldn't do much, low energy, all this kind of stuff. So I was almost bracing myself to be like, right, what's this gonna be like? I didn't really know what to expect. And when it came about, it was absolutely fine. Like, I remember, for example, we just tweaked things, and I'm very open-minded to that stuff. So that's why, again, we worked very well together. For example, there was one evening when we were going to the cinema, and because you were obviously on a strict diet, whereas me, I'm just like, I'd happily have a Nando's, right? You were like, oh, look, I'm going to bring my Tupperware and bring my chicken portions and my rice. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I said, well, bring me a portion too. That's fine. If you don't mind, bring me one, and we'll just sit and eat out of our Tupperware. And you were like, oh, okay, cool. And I think on that day, you said something like, your mum asked you, right? She said something like, oh, are you taking food in Tupperware? Like, why don't you take her out to a restaurant or something? And you said something like, oh, it's fine. She knows, like, she knows what I'm like. It's fine. And she wants one too. And some people would find that really strange, or they may not be able to grasp that concept of your partner's doing something he's passionate about, he's so interested in, and it's for himself. He's doing something for himself. And for me, I could be like, oh, I want an ice cream, I want a chocolate, I want to do this. But I was like, no, let me just do that as well. It's a one-off. So we did a lot of that, where we did the Tupperware eating.
Well, just to clarify, this is only like in the depths of the grind.
Oh, sorry, the depths of the
it's
diet.
Not like on a weekly basis.
No, not weekly basis. Oh, no. This is just during the
extremes of the last bits when I'm trying to get the shredded glutes and all that.
Yeah, so it's just being a bit more understanding during that period, just as though if I was going through something, I'm sure you would be very understanding, as you have been in the past. So there's that element. And then there's the element of you eating very lean. So I used to drink a lot of alcohol. I say a lot of alcohol. I used to go out like every Friday or Saturday night, not getting drunk, but I have like 2-3 drinks, let's say. Whereas you drank less alcohol, and your lifestyle was more focused on your work. Like, you wanted to get the early nights in, wake up early, focus on your work, and have that routine. Whereas I didn't have as much of that. I was very much like just crazy outgoing and wanted to go out all the time. So looking back, that lifestyle was good for the stage of life I was at, but you've changed my mindset in a positive way around eating out, around habits, around food as well. So I ate very, very quickly, and you've taught me the right way to do things.
So with some advice for people who are in similar situations, is it more around, like, I never said to you, you need to do this.
You never said anything
or I need you to do this. No. This is the thing, like,
never.
What is the approach there? Is it literally for whoever is on the other side of the relationship to just be open-minded and just support the other person and actually potentially think, oh, let me try it and see how it feels?
Yes. Because that's the one thing, like you nailed it there, because you never said to me, I want you to go to the gym, or I want you to eat this, or if I'm eating like crisps every day, you've never said, you know, oh, they're really unhealthy. You never judged me for anything.
Well, this is that joke that people always say to me, oh yeah, is your girlfriend, you know, hooked on the gym is like you, she's just like you. And it's always been like, actually, no, it's actually not like that at all. And I'm actually glad it's not. It's just very like, it's just a healthy lifestyle, and that's it.
Yeah, and I'd say it's gotten a lot more healthier since being with you, but that's just helped me and my energy levels and getting to where I need to be as well. So it's really helped me progress as a person. That's what I mean. I just feel like I've found the missing piece of the puzzle to what I need. That's what I mean. We work really, really well together in that sense.
Yeah. Taking it back to dating, what advice would you give to people who are single right now? You know, coming out of lockdown, people are single, they're dating again, they're looking for relationships. What advice would you give? Because
yes,
this is something you talk a lot about in your platform.
Yeah.
Talk about tips for people who are currently dating, and then maybe some extra tips for those in the early stages trying to figure out if it's the right one or not.
Ooh, so dating.
When I say that, I mean right one to continue pursuing rather than to know if it's for good.
So I've been out of the dating game for a long time, but I've got many experiences of dating, and dating is difficult. Like it can be challenging, it can be tedious. You're meeting all these people, or maybe not meeting people because you're too scared to even start dating. But what I think, or what I would say, is that you need to know what you want from a relationship, and you will know what you want from a relationship having been in a relationship or through dating, because you're meeting these different guys with different personalities, different careers, different families, different everything. So then you learn to pick out traits that you think work for you. And that's the one thing I would say. So don't knock it and continue on, because I know it is tedious, especially if you're doing online dating. There's so many different apps. You know, you're swiping along. I've had times where back in the day when one of my friends is on an app and we all just take the phone and just go swipe left, right, left, and without even thinking of anything. And it's almost like it's just so easy to do. So it's dismissed a lot of, but continue on and push through and definitely go on dates. There's nothing wrong with dating or meeting guys. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no expectations, there's no pressures. Just go in and be yourself, be open-minded, and see how it works out. But it definitely it's good to know what you want. So go in with a list and don't settle. That's the one thing.
How do you know what you really want though?
You'll know through, comes back to kind of self-love, being alone, knowing what your values are.
Yeah.
So what's important to you, what's important to me. So for example, I knew that family and friendships, relationships are really important to me. So I wouldn't want to be with someone who neglects that because it just doesn't line up to what I want. I know I want a family in the future, so I wouldn't be with someone who doesn't want a family in the future. I know that I'm ambitious, so I want someone who's just as ambitious. Like all these things that line up to what I want or what I value. I was expecting that, which obviously it does. So it's all good. But I'd say definitely go in with that. And if you don't know, you just learn.
And how do you avoid falling into the trap of just settling? Because this is something we see a lot of.
Yeah.
We talked about it in the past of people we know who've done that. But it's a very easy thing to fall into.
Yeah.
How do you avoid that?
I think it's don't sell yourself short, and have that. It's once you know that you love yourself and you're happy to be by yourself, you won't settle. So a lot of people I find can get into relationships because they're afraid of being alone. They go from relationship to relationship to relationship because they don't know how to be by themselves. So when you know how to be by yourself, when you love yourself, you're then ready to be like, right, I'm ready to go out there, and you wouldn't settle because you're already comfortable where you are here. So why would you want to be going for something that you know you're just settling for?
What's some easy steps people can take to actually get to that point of feeling comfortable with themselves? Like apart from you can't always kick off and go solo traveling.
No.
It's not really realistic for many people now. Lockdown or whatever's going on in life. But what's some other things people can do?
I'd say something that I still do a lot of is having alone time. So that could just be, for example, having our own space.
Yeah.
So between us, you know that I like to just kind of sit down sometimes for a few hours, not be disturbed. And I'm just happy in my own space, my own time. I'm reading or I'm writing or doing something that I enjoy. And it's always good to have your passions as well, something that you're interested in. Now that could be something as small as I like to go out for walks, or I like to read a book. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I want to play the piano, or it could be anything, but it's nice to have something that you own. I found that, so I've started digging out to see, right, what can I own, what do I like, because that all contributes to being by yourself, but also you're happy doing things by yourself as well. And for me, the walking has really helped as well. So since I joined RNT, going on my solo walks, because that just gives me time to reflect and introspect as well. So I'm walking around, taking everything in and just thinking, lots of thinking. And doing that just allows me to dig deeper and deeper. So I find things that I like about myself or that I enjoy doing, or it could be anything. So little things like that, I'd say definitely would contribute to loving yourself.
That whole concept, I think a lot of men might find it quite corny.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And even women might be thinking, just rolling their eyes at, thinking, there's another person just saying this, love yourself. A guy's probably just thinking, this is really corny. But can you explain, what does it actually mean? Break it down a bit more, because it's even when I hear it, sometimes you say it, and you say it so often, I'm like...
Not that often. But yeah, no, I agree.
What's a trait of someone who does do that?
No, it's someone who is so happy with life and within themselves, and they're confident, they're just in a good place. It's almost like when someone says something negative to me or about me or anything, I'm just like, okay, cool, that's your opinion. I'm not gonna let that impact me. I'm in such a good place that I'm just like, you can say what you want, that's fine. I'm great. You're not gonna knock me down.
Yeah. And
it's almost like it took time to get there, but it's a place where you're just in love with the world. Like you're just vibrating energy and you're taking it all in, and you're just in a good place.
Yeah. It's just hard to describe, basically.
It is, yeah. I think you really need to feel it, because when you're there, you will then know, because you'll be doing great things. For example, if you are scared to take that, or you won't be searching for these opportunities, but when they come, you won't be afraid to be like, actually, yes, I'm going to do that. If there's a promotion coming up, I'm not afraid to go for it. I will go for it. If there's a job that you want to do, I will try that. If there's a relationship that you want to enter, I'm not afraid to tell him how I feel or tell her how I feel. It's almost like you're taking charge and taking control. So you've got the confidence to actually do that.
Yeah. So just to kind of start wrapping up, since we started living together, so it's been about 14 months now.
Yeah.
What's one thing you learned about me that you didn't know before?
That you are domestic.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I didn't know that before. And by that, I mean, I had just assumed, because your family always said, oh my God, you guys are living together, he's going to have to brush up on all. And I was thinking, who am I living with? What's going to happen? Because I love things being clean and tidy.
Yeah. And
what surprised me even more was that you cook and you then clean and then you keep things tidy, and you're happy to take on my... criticism about, can you tidy this area? I like things really neat, and you're on board with it. So that helps, because I've had, guys can be messy, and you don't leave the toilet seat up, or you used to, and I told you to put it down, so.
Yeah, that's what the weekly check-in does. Domesticates
exactly.
you. Domesticates you.
Yeah. So I think we really nailed it, because initially there's that period of, you live how you live, I live how I live, but now we live together.
Yeah. Last thing, Fearless Females community, where can people find out more? How can they get involved? What should they expect?
So the community, there is a Facebook group with nearly 250 members now, which is great. So there's lots of activity happening in there. I have an Instagram page as well, and you can probably put in the show notes. And I've got loads of events such as book clubs which are coming out. So I do monthly book clubs because I love reading. And I found that I had no one to talk to the books about, apart from obviously you, because we read similar things. But I wanted to hear it from other people's perspectives.
Yeah.
And so I started the book clubs, which have been a hit. And it's been really nice talking about the different stories and characters and themes with other women. So yeah, there's that.
What sort of books are you reviewing on there?
Marie, so it's all. So I'm trying to do female authors or books about females, and the one which we're doing this month is Tattooist of Auschwitz,
Okay.
and next month is The Henna Artist. So we've done loads of books that I love so far, as Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, Michelle Obama's book, which was amazing. That's Becoming. I love The Crawdads. That was such a good book. 40 Rules of Love. We haven't done a book club on it yet, but it's another incredible book. So I found my passion for reading through the lockdown. So it started last year in March, and been reading every day since then. Probably about an hour a day. We have our little reading time together in the morning, don't we?
Yeah.
Which is nice. And then you like try and talk, and I'm like, I'm reading.
So what can people expect in there? Like, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can just drop me a message. You can just ask to join the group. I've got a newsletter coming out as well. So what to expect. There's stuff all about empowering women. So I've also got a podcast actually, and on the podcast, I have many different women coming on talking to us about their stories. I'm having experts coming in soon talking about relationships, about imposter syndrome. So the whole aim is to really empower women and let them know that they're not alone, and it's okay to talk about these things.
Yeah.
So I want them to reach out, but more so reach out to each other as well. So those who are going through similar things, let's talk about it. Let's get these like-minded women together and start discussions.
I'm going to ask one more thing off the back of that. How have you overcome your imposter syndrome? Any feelings of imposter syndrome in the last year? Because you've done a lot of new things which have stretched you right out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
You know, for example, like starting a podcast, even just doing this.
Oh my god, I would never have done this.
Like normally you're like, keep me off the record, like keep me out of public eye. And now you're like, I want to be episode 200.
I want to be, wasn't it more like, do you want to be episode 200? I'm pretty sure you asked me. Yeah, what I would say is, I'm overcoming imposter syndrome as each bit comes. So every step in Fearless Females, there's something new that I have to tackle, and I think, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
And the doubt kicks in. The one thing that's really kept me going, now this is going to be really corny, but it is the support from you. So when I started, and this is a little exposure here, but when I started Fearless Females, it was all actually thanks to you. So you came up with the name, you came up with the concept, and it was all through my passion. So you knew that I loved helping other women, mentoring women. You love that I love talk about kind of solo travel and want others to do it. And I had a travel blog and all this kind of stuff. So you almost put all that together and said, this is great, why don't you start this project? And it initially started off as, let's do a project. And since then it's just grown and grown. And you've always been there giving me ideas and helping me through, I don't know how to do this. Oh, that's fine, you do it this way. So it's really, really nice that you've been there to bounce ideas off of, because it's like you're my number one cheerleader in the background. It's like, go. It's like, okay, I can do it. You can do it. Okay, I'll do it.
I'm not paying her to say this. I'm not paying her to say this.
But you know, like, it's just, I don't think I've actually said it to you, like, in this way, but yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it without you, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that's as far as it goes. Like, I tell people what I'm doing, like, let's say friends, and they get it, and they're always very supportive. But in terms of how to build it and go further and further and further, that's come through you. You've been there. So that's helped me with imposter syndrome. Anytime I'm like, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this, or you're just there like, yes, you can, why not? And then we talk about it like, you've done this, sure you can. And I'm like, okay, cool, okay, I can do it.
Yeah, the best way to overcome it is through action.
Absolutely. I think I definitely agree with that. Through action and taking small steps. So I sometimes get overwhelmed with thinking, I want to do this, that's the end game. And there's 100 different things to do, and you're just there like, okay, well, you don't need to know all those 100 things, just start with this. You know, it's almost like, okay, start with the podcast, start with episode 1, get some friends on. Okay, cool. You know, I'm thinking, I really would like Michelle Obama on my podcast, or Beyonce, because I love Beyonce. I'd love Beyonce on my podcast, but that's like the end game. So actually, before Beyonce and Michelle, I'm going to have to get my friends, then my sister-in-law, then my cousins, then people I don't know, and eventually it just kind of ticks over, right? Because you're doing one little step, and all the steps add up, and eventually you're like, I've got a podcast with 27 episodes, and I've got this and that, and a thriving community. So it just all adds up, and you've helped me understand that and actually take action. So when you tell me something, I trust you so much. I'm like, yes, I'll do it. Like that's it. Like it's going to be that. So you give me that belief. So thank you.
No worries. So exactly back to July 2018, did you think we'd be where we are now? Recording a podcast, a couple months away from getting married. Did you think that was where we were going to be at a couple of years ago?
So what? Did I think we'd be like recording a podcast in this place that we own? Oh, probably not.
Yeah, that's probably a bit too specific. Yeah.
A bit specific, but did I think back then that this is the long term? This isn't. I'm in it for the long term. Yes.
Yeah.
I knew. I
So
think I knew very
stops and took you to a steakhouse.
Yeah.
That's how I knew.
That's not how I knew, ladies. That just because you went to a steakhouse, but no, I knew because through our conversation, through how aligned we were, through everything, like we just clicked. You just know. And this is me saying this because I was single for 5 years prior to us meeting. So 5 years, and in those 5 years, I'd obviously dated, like I'd met guys, and I just didn't click with anyone. I didn't align with anyone. There was no one who I thought to myself, this is the guy I want to marry.
Yeah.
But I had that with you, and all my family and friends who are listening to this will know because I got all giddy and excited, and I was with them talking to about it. So they've been there through this journey with me. So they always say, I remember what it was like when you were dating him, and you were like this, and you were like a little girl, school girl, and I was like, oh my God, was I? But yeah, and I just think ever since then it's just grown more and more and more and more. So did I think it? I'd probably say yeah, I did.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome. It's been great.